Trucker Dump for July 1st, 2011, Episode 70, Post-Hell, Pre-Hell.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey there, folks. Todd McCann here. Well, as I'll say in the podcast, today's topic really has nothing to do with trucking. But since I've had so many people asking me about this on Twitter, I figured I'd better bring everyone up to speed. I call this one Post-Hell, Pre-Hell. Yeah, I know that sounds backwards, but stick around till the end and it'll all be made known. Well, kinda. Well, as I said many times in high school, enough with the teasing already. Many of you know that my entire family lives in Joplin, Missouri, and that means they recently went through the tornado. Here's an update on my last home time. It wasn't all devastation and destruction, though. Oh, and this post has got absolutely nothing to do with trucking, other than the fact that it had me 1,400 miles away when the tornado touched down. With Taco Bell in hand, the evil overlord and I dropped in to see my mom and brother after they lost their home to the tornado that ripped Joplin, Missouri to shreds. And for those of you wondering about that living arrangement, I assure you that my older brother isn't a serial killer. He has OCD, that's obsessive compulsive disorder, and not the cute kind you see in the movies, the real kind. God bless my mom. Hey, wait a second. Serial killers always turn out to be such a nice man. Better keep an eye on him. Over the undefinable goodness of Mexican pizzas, they described what they remembered of the actual event, which was surprisingly little. Mom said she wasn't particularly worried about the tornado warning because she'd been in so many before, nothing had ever became of it. I'll bet she's not the only one who's been through a tornado that had those thoughts. Tim was getting worried and was trying to decide whether he should head to the bathtub or not. When a tornado's on the way, I'm guessing it's not a very good time to have OCD. Not that there is a good time for it. Mom was in her bedroom and remembers looking out the window and seeing a branch blowing violently. That's when it hit. Tim remembered a window shattering. Mom remembered getting thrown down at the end of the bed. They both said it sounded like the loudest freight train in the world. Since that's pretty much how everyone describes it, that didn't exactly surprise me. Next thing they knew, they were both buried in rubble. Mom with her heavy sewing table forming a little roof over her head, thank God for old-fashioned well-built furniture, and Tim was buried in an awkward fetal position with his arm behind his back. They have no idea how long they were buried before some neighbors came calling. After they got unburied, they were on their way to a neighbor's place when the authorities came and told them to go down the street to a safe haven. They were concerned that the gas lines might ignite. Yikes! That's when my sister Angie and her husband Mike showed up and took control of the situation. Thank God my little sis is good at stuff like that, because I was in Vermont at the time. Mom and Tim stayed with them for the next few days while they sorted through the rubble. Here's the thing. This devastating event once again confirms why I'd like to give every member of the media a shoulder ride while walking under a running helicopter. There was lots of reporting on the looting and other horrific stories, but very few reports of the good deeds that were done. Everyone remembers the Christian wacko that predicted the rapture the day before. Very little was said about the real Christians who helped in the aftermath of the storm. My family said that every single day they were going through the debris, a church group, always Christian, came by and offered food, drink, and sometimes even gift cards to help the survivors. One man came by and asked Mike if he used to live there. Mike explained that he owned the house, but Mom and Tim lived there. The guy handed him a $200 gift card and walked away. Now, I don't know if this guy was a Christian or not, but I'm going to go ahead and claim him as one of ours. That just sounds like something Jesus would do. Even if he wasn't, where were this guy's good deeds on the news? Where were the stories about the Christian churches that helped? If a Christian church shows up to protest a soldier's funeral or tell a town that their city was hit by a tornado because they're a bunch of sinners, the media's all over it. An act of kindness? Well, that's not good TV. Anyone got a helicopter handy? Okay, off the soapbox. Now for the positives of the aftermath. Although the house was leveled, they somehow managed to save a lot of their belongings. They were going to need new beds and living room furniture, but not because they were blown away by the 200-mile-an-hour winds. It was the rain that fell nearly every day for the next week that ruined them. Luckily, that home was a rental, unluckily owned by my brother-in-law and sister, and Mom and Tim's old place hadn't sold yet, so at least they had a home to go to. Many Joplin residents were still holed up in hotel rooms. Angie and Mike set them up with beds and a new TV, and Uncle provided a nice leather couch. It seems that when the new wife doesn't like it, it's got to go anyway. The washer and dryer survived. Even a delicate vase of Mom's managed to survive. Now, their minivan had a metal stake through the headrest, but a fragile vase survives without a scratch. Tornadoes are weird like that. Even the majority of Tim's vast music collection was saved. His cassettes are probably ruined by the rain, but his CDs and vinyl records seem to have survived. Their only physical damage was cuts and bruises. They said Mom's face displayed every color of the rainbow over the course of 2 weeks. By the time I got there 2 weeks after the storm, they were both pretty well healed up. And for the record, my sister told me not to come home early to help. She said they were limited by the rain as to how much they could actually do. I did have dispatch head me back closer to home and run me around there just in case they needed me. All said and done, they came out of this with more emotional damage than physical or monetary. Sure, they lost some personal stuff, but the most important stuff survived. Them and all the family photos. And that's pretty darn good considering an F5 tornado went right over their heads. The part I regret most was the fact that I didn't manage to go into Joplin to see the damage firsthand. I'm told that it's eerie to stand in the middle of the rubble and look off in the distance at the now visible hospital. All the trees and houses blocked the view before. Everyone says that TV images and pictures just can't do it justice. I had planned to drive up there before I left, but as is typical, the nephews were a handful to put in bed the night before and no one woke up in time. Speaking of those pesky nephews, the next day was a fun day. Jacob, my 12-year-old nephew, had $10 burning a hole in his pocket, so good old Uncle Todd took him to Walmart. He bought a Super Soaker pistol for $7, and realizing that it wouldn't be much fun by himself, he tried to talk me into buying a couple more for the other two boys, Jared, 10, and Joel, 6. I did what any good uncle would do. I put a guilt trip on him. The evil overlord had told me not to spend any money, so I said, "You realize the more money I spend, the longer I have to stay out on the road." End of discussion. He didn't want that. Isn't that sweet? The little fart knocker. That's when he saw the water pistols for $1 each. He grabbed 3 of them, 2 for his brothers and 1 for me. He then remembered taxes and deduced he didn't have enough for the 3rd gun. I convinced him I could afford the taxes on $10. And by the way, thank you, China, for making water guns that leak before you even pull the stinking trigger. Once home, you can probably guess what happened. As we were filling up the guns with the water hose, Jacob took hold of it. Before any of the guns were filled, everyone was soaked to the skin. What was I thinking handing the hose to a 12-year-old boy? I used to be one, for crying out loud. Well, we had a lot of fun until things got out of hand. I hadn't realized how powerful the stream from the water hose was until I took a direct blast to the face. I thought it was going to shove my eyeballs back into my skull and out my nose holes. A stern warning from me about spraying in the face, and the soaking resumed. Although there was some intense duck and cover army tactics going on, the majority of the drenching consisted of standing in a line while one person soaked down the rest with a fire hose. The hoser got to shout out, "Turn!" and we all had to turn. Again, being boys, this basically involved frontal blasting while the targets covered their eyes with one hand and their junk with the other as the hose holder took careful aim and laughed maniacally. Of course, Jared eventually couldn't resist the urge to blast me in the face when I wasn't expecting it, and there the fun stopped. Why do kids always push their luck? When the evil overlord saw us all dripping at the front door, she sent us packing down the road to dry off first. I'm pretty sure she was trying to peter him out. Possibly me, too. It sure worked on me. Not so much on them. Young boys are like monkeys on Red Bull. So this home time involved mostly good news. It seems odd to say when it involved a tornado and taking fire hose blasts to tender areas. Still, it was good that I had some good news and some good times, because in a few days, it was all going to go to hell in a handbasket. Stay tuned.
Yo, Bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Oh boy, did I get some good comments on the last podcast. That's the one about the CSA. I narrowed it down to 3 of them. They're all fairly long, but they're all very significant. I thought you guys ought to hear what's going on. So let's get on with it. Driver says, on January 25th, 2011, I was in New Mexico on Highway 54 and my pigtail disconnected from the trailer. I noticed my lights out on my trailer, and before I could pull over to fix it, a car came up on me and was tailgating. Then the blue lights came on and I was pulled over. I let the officer know that my pigtail probably disconnected, and he did the normal routine logbook, regulation check, etc. He came back to the truck and I asked him if he wanted me to fix a pigtail. He said yeah, and he's going to do a quick walk around. I plugged my pigtail in and he did his walk around while my lights are on and my hazards are flashing. Now on the DOT inspection report, he puts every single light on the trailer as a violation. I had 7 violations for lights. They were either inoperable, no light, or defective. 3 of those are out of service violations. I also had to ask the officer to put in the comments that the pigtail was disconnected. I asked him with the CSA 2010 going on, how this is going to affect me or my company. His reply was, I don't know. They haven't told us about that stuff yet. I'm a driver of 4 years. I'm not a perfect driver, but I haven't been in any accidents, no speeding tickets, 1 warning for speeding, and I don't have an awful inspection history. From what I was told by my fleet manager and safety, I was fired because of this inspection, and said this inspection drove my score too high to keep me. Well, driver, this is unbelievable. For you non-truckers, the pigtail is the electric cord that runs from the tractor to the trailer. So now that that's explained, let me just say, what a crock of crap. I don't even know where to start with this. If you'd pull over to the side of the highway to plug the pigtail back in, he could have issued a ticket for parking on the roadway. Been there, done that. Yet when you immediately told the officer you knew what was wrong, he ticketed you anyway. 7 freaking times. Wow. Now see, that's the problem with this CSA crap. In the past, you would have just paid the fine and gone on about your life. These violations wouldn't have been grounds to lose your license or anything. But now with the CSA points, you get fired. Unbelievable. This is exactly the type of thing I was talking about in my article. When something goes wrong while you're going down the road, what do they expect us to do? I'm really sorry you lost your job over this. I was talking with my safety director the other day, and he's been expecting this to happen ever since the CSA was first introduced. He expects a lot of others to walk away from the industry before the CSA has a chance to boot them out. So driver, thanks for leaving a comment with this experience. I hope you find a new driving job soon, and please keep me informed on what happens with your driving career. I'm curious to know how all this is going to affect your getting rehired. I'm wondering if all companies have the same bad driver thresholds. Please notice I've got quotes around that bad driver. Well, driver wrote me back and said, hey, Todd, thanks for the support. I apologize for any miscommunication on my part. I never received any tickets. The violations were on my DOT inspection report, and I signed driver-made repair for the out-of-service violations. I decided to write an email to the CSA feedback found on the FMCSA website. I let them know about New Mexico and the reasons for my termination given to me from my former company. This is a quote from the email I received. Quote, since FMCSA does not have a formal way to evaluate drivers, carriers make up their own system. Their system uses parts of DSMS or carrier SMS. FMCSA does not have any driver thresholds, so that figure is coming from your carrier. Often carriers buy third-party software to help them with their calculations. End quote. Now, as far as employment, companies like Swift, US Express, etc., some of the very large companies won't hire me on until I've been employed by another trucking company for 6 months. I'm probably better off. I've had 4 different trucking companies willing to hire me on. I've been taking my time looking, and I'm feeling better about getting behind the wheel now that the DOT blitz is over. Be safe out there. Stephanie. Ooh, it's a lady driver. Thanks, Stephanie. It's good to know that it's not the government deciding what a good CSA score is. Although it's not going to be easy to know how strict a carrier is until they give you the axe. Glad to hear you've had multiple job offers, though. Let's hope your new company isn't as strict with the CSA rules. Good luck. Next up, we have someone calling himself Autoped. You guys aren't going to believe this one. He says, I'm not a big fan of this CSA as well for other reasons. My particular instance involves a bad carrier forcing me to drive unsafe vehicles. I was given ultimatums of roll with it or get fired. Well, the government isn't going to feed my family, and I remember filling out truck driving applications including "Have you ever been fired from a job?" questions in the application being a heavy question. What other recourse does a truck driver have? It's easy to find new truck drivers with clean records who don't mind marring it up, but for those people who make this a career, it's devastating. My particular case involved hauling heavy equipment on an RGN in Texas. An RGN is a removable gooseneck. That's a lowboy trailer designed to haul really big equipment. He continues, I told my company when I came aboard that the trailer brakes on the trailer were all out of adjustment, as well as other issues with the rig itself. Here it is, a month later, nothing has been repaired, and I'm being called to make a 400-mile haul while Texas DPS is doing a 72-hour DOT sting. I advise them that the truck and trailer be put out of service, and I get the same old roll with it response. After arguing with my bosses about the situation, I get the ultimatum, and I'm forced to drive the truck, broken and without 50% of the brakes. Lo and behold, I'm stopped for a level 1 inspection by Texas. They went over the rig with a fine-tooth comb and found a good 2 pages of violations. All but the brakes were warnings, and the brake issue was a violation. I was put out of service, and I called my boss to tell him, I told you so. The hard part about this was that the company didn't even fix the brakes until almost a month after the violation. Just before that particular violation, I was inspecting a 1.5-ton pickup gooseneck trailer combination for a trip from Texas to Kansas. I found that the brakes on this trailer didn't work either. In early July, I was coming back from a trip in the 18-wheeler. The brakes were finally fixed, but now I lost power to my dash. And I was told I needed to take the pickup gooseneck trailer combo for a short local haul. I pre-tripped the truck and trailer and still no brakes. Well, same threats, and I get stuck on the road with it. And luck so be my lady, I got pulled over for suspicion of the lack of a Class A CDL. I showed him the CDL, and the officer is relieved and then starts a level 1 inspection. They find the brake issue, put me out of service, and I get a ticket for it. My boss comes to the site and pays off the cop to allow the company to drive an out-of-service vehicle back to their shop. When the truck got back to the shop, I saw some workers loading up a piece of machinery on my rig, and I asked if the rig was fixed. He said yes. I do a thorough inspection and find that the dashboard accessories, gauges, and AC work with the key off. After a while, I found a wire jump from one end of the fuse block to the other. That's a good way to burn a truck down, let me tell you. I told my boss that the truck wasn't fixed and I wasn't driving it. After yet another argument, my boss said, "So what are you going to do?" I was finally fed up and quit right then and there. 1 month consisting of 2 level 1 inspections, both putting me out of service, and a grand total of 89 points on my CSA record. I've had my CDL for 5 years now, not to mention spotless, and one company comes and destroys it. And now I'm left wondering if those points are going to get me fired from my current job. I'm currently looking for an attorney to sue my old job for damages. Don't you just love how federal law is designed to remove the unsafe, drag down the good as well? If we could file a class action suit against this CSA BS, maybe then they'll learn that they can't standardize an issue this critical not only to the livelihoods of several honest workers, but to an already fragile economy. Man, Autoped, I can't believe this one. I'm sure we both know that the folks over at the CSA mean well. Like you said, though, it's too bad it brings down the good along with the bad. I think you brought up a point that every driver should pay attention to. No longer can we drivers tolerate driving inferior equipment or driving illegal. That's as simple as it gets. I've heard other drivers talking about driving defective equipment, but your ex-employer seems to be worse than most. I have to ask why you continue to work for them after they continually lied to you. I can only imagine that it's associated with the crappy economy and the lack of available jobs. You know, I'll let the first lie slide, but lie to me again and someone's getting a talking to. And no one likes a narc, but I think this may be a prime example of justifying narkiness. Think about it. They force you to drive unsafe equipment, putting your life at risk. When they're forced to make repairs, they jury-rig them instead of fixing them properly. They keep lying to you like you're some kind of moron, even though you keep catching them in the act by doing thorough pre-trip inspections. I'm sorry, but these guys have got it coming. If it were me, I'd have narked. I guess I'd have started with the DOT and gone from there until someone listened. What's the worst that could happen? You might get fired, collect unemployment during your next job search, and keep from racking up all those CSA points. And if for some strange reason you wanted to keep working for these lying jerks after you'd been fired, well, I imagine you'd have no problem getting your job back if you threaten to sue them. I can't imagine anyone who'd think it's right to fire someone for whistleblowing to make the roads safer. In close, I'm glad you quit the company. I wish you'd have done it earlier, but seeing as how all this took place in one short month, I see why you didn't. Let's hope that the CSA manages to run these guys out of business. That is their purpose after all. If this crappy carrier manages to stay in business without straightening up their act, clearly the CSA should clean out their offices and look for other jobs. Maybe these lying jerks will hire them. And last up, we've got Greg R., who unleashes the fury. He says, as a driver of 14 years, I'm completely blown away at the stupidity and total lack of knowledge our government officials continue to display. Come on, you talk about a slap in the face to every driver on the road. The email claiming the FMCSA has no control over a carrier's driver threshold is total BS. They clearly designed and implemented the CSA 2010 system. They clearly give the carriers a performance threshold to stay in business. And they clearly put the heart of the trucking industry, drivers, as the ultimate target. Who takes the carrier's equipment out on the road to be subjected to these new rules? If the equipment didn't move from the carrier's yard, then they'd all have no problem meeting CSA 2010. Oh my, I just got to scratch my head at this crap. There will be thousands of drivers who end up losing their jobs because a carrier chooses to roll the dice with their employment on the line. It's simple. If a driver gets points while operating their equipment, just get rid of the driver. Carriers have to stay under a threshold to avoid DOT intervention. Unfortunately, it'll be the driver who pays the ultimate price. How screwed up is this? Companies are already turning away drivers with too many points on the record, even if the company desperately needs drivers. Yes, even if they need drivers in the worst way. If that doesn't wake up every single driver out there, I don't know what will. Cover your butts, guys and gals. Stay away from companies that are willing to put your family's incomes on the line. If that just isn't possible in your particular situation, then use your smartphones to record conversations with these lowlifes. Take pictures to show an ongoing history of equipment neglect. So at least when you're let go, they won't be able to fight your unemployment. Punish people who are willing to sacrifice a normal family life and put in 70 hours a week? What the heck? Good luck to you all. Well, Greg, you've got an excellent point there. The FMCSA and the CSA have to be in this together. Thanks for pointing that out. I have a feeling this is going to go down just as every other change does. Drivers say they'll leave the industry if the rules change, or if their company gets e-logs, or. The fact of the matter is, we'll all suck it up like we always do, whine for a while, then fall into line. It's sad, but true. The only light I see is that if the CSA does wind up costing the industry too many drivers, they'll hopefully back off the strictness of the penalties. At least we can hope. Who else is going to haul the freight? The carriers already can't find enough drivers. Well, thanks for the comment, Greg. Now go have a beer and take a deep breath. Relax, man. Everything's going to be okay. Or not. Well, folks, even though those were really long, you can see why I wanted to read them. It's really important that we all tell these stories and get this stuff out so we can all see how the CSA is going to affect all of us drivers. So I'd personally like to thank Driver, aka Stephanie, Autoped, and Greg R. for leaving these great comments. And when you guys do this, it really confirms and backs up what I'm trying to say. So I wish all you drivers would do this more often. Tell us your stories. Tell us your insights about these subjects that are so important to what's going on in the industry today. So now are you motivated to comment on something? So if you've got anything to say about any of these topics, past, present, or future, or any other topic about the trucking industry, let us all hear about it. Make sure you contact me, and we'll get some of this stuff out on the air. Don't leave me out here as the only guy venting. And here's how you can contact me. Well, I can't really imagine what you'd want to say about today's topic, but if you got any questions, concerns, suggestions, or general statements to make about trucking or anything else, drop me a line at truckerdump@gmail.com. You can find links to subscribe to the blog or the podcast over at abouttruckdriving.com, or you can find the podcast by searching for Trucker Dump on iTunes. When you're over there, please consider leaving a review on the show. You don't have to be nice, but you don't have to be mean either. Constructive criticism is more than welcome. What else? Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter as Todd Mechanic. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. Give me a follow and say hi. Be sure to mention you listen to the podcast. Thanks. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way.